October 31st, 7 p.m. A 400-meter curtain is cast over Shibuya, causing a mass panic in the city. 8:14 p.m. The famed assassin Akame is the first to arrive at the scene. Previous intel reported mention of a cursed spirit, currently known as Patchface, to be present in the city. This is Night Raid's current target. All of a sudden, a name can be heard echoing across the city of Shibuya. Citizens have begun to shout the name Akame. The reason unknown for their sudden interest in the owner of the cursed blade, Murasame, a sword that can kill anyone with just one cut. 8:31 p.m. Akame decides to pursue the target and goes alone into the curtain. Scouting out the area, years of intense training under the capital's assassination squads lets her stay undetected by gathering crowds. After traveling through the curtain and moving deeper into Shibuya train station, Akame reaches the basement floor. She is determined to eliminate any enemy that stands in her path. 8:39 p.m. The remaining members of the Assassin's Guild Night Raid arrive at the curtain. Tatsumi, the wielder of the dragon armor and Curcio, Nahenda, the captain of Night Raid, and Susanoo, her humanoid imperial arms. They are the first group to split off from the others. Nahenda briefs Tatsumi on the situation. The captain had already crafted a plan to carry out the mission. They plan to support Akame directly and join her in the city's subways, leading to a full-on assault. Until a second cloak gets cast in another part of the city, forcing the team to change course. Only a few minutes later, Akame reaches the base of the Shibuya metro station. She enters and maneuvers through the crowd, still undetected, when she notices three figures standing on the tracks. The cursed spirits we know as Jogo, Hanami, and Choso, all potential targets of Night Raid. Before her location is revealed, she decides to go in for the kill. She grips her sword and begins to approach. Akame swiftly maneuvers herself behind the group of enemies. She swings her blade with intent to eliminate all three of them at once before Choso stands in her way, holding off the assassin with the hardened blood covering his arms. Akame steps back and repositions when suddenly thick roots begin to cover the exits. The cursed spirit Jogo begins to taunt Akame before she interrupts him. All of you will rest in pieces. Akame once again prepares to attack, but the metro gates begin to open, citizens flooding in one by one. Jogo begins to blitz through the crowd, a ball of fire engulfing the palm of his hand. Hanami's roots begin to cover the surrounding area, and Choso scatters orbs of blood hovering in the air around him. The showdown begins. Akame versus the disaster curses. Akame flashes past civilians, landing herself directly in front of Jogo. She looks up at him with an attack from below, swinging her sword up in an arc. Jogo grabs a non-sorcerer and quickly makes use of the human shield. Akame's sword stops short of the man's face before a flame begins to pierce his body, causing her to retreat. The man's body quickly disposed of by Jogo's flames. As Akame leaps back, a grip finds itself around her foot. Hanami quickly hoists her into the air before the roots find themselves dismembered by the sharp end of a blade. The assassin quickly recovers, landing flat on her feet. She looks straight ahead to find a laser-like beam of blood inches away from her face. In an instant, her sword is vertical to the attack, splitting the beam of blood in half. Jogo looks to his allies and warns them about Akame's blade and its ability to kill anyone with just one cut. The disaster curses stand firm together, and citizens desperate for escape cry out for help and begin to clamor around Akame. Akame, in the blink of an eye, leaps off of the ground to a nearby pillar, then the ceiling. She charges Choso, who stands solely to the right of the other two. In an instant, the orbs of blood around them burst, clearly cut in half. Choso attempts to detonate the remaining drops of blood, but nothing happens. This blood isn't the iron tough shield Choso had used before. It was easy enough to cut through with Murasame. Akame's blade flies through the air, finding itself ready to pierce Choso's eye, before a wave of heat surrounds her. She swiftly moves out of the way, preparing for a counterattack. Moving in once more, Akame focuses in on Choso, with Hanami and Jogo failing to catch her. She begins her assault, weakening one point in Choso's armor again and again. Citizens face a very unfortunate loss in the process, more and more falling to the disaster curses. One more time, Akame moves in. This time she appears behind Choso. He begins to turn his head as she rotates her body with a swing of her blade. He's barely able to catch the assassin in his sight. The scene plays out in slow motion as Choso's blood begins to move up his neck. Jogo and Hanami surround the assassin, ready to land a fatal blow, when in the fraction of a second, she vanishes. Hanami is stunned, her chest pierced by Murasame, Akame standing behind her. Jogo yells to get Akame's attention, but it's too late. Markings begin to crawl themselves around Hanami's body, targeting both her heart and soul. Akame removes her blade, kicking the cursed spirit to the ground, and Hanami's corpse falls lifeless. Akame forms the words, "No mercy, you will rest in pieces," before she's on the hunt once more. 8:51 p.m. Tatsumi, Nahenda, and Susanoo travel deeper into the subway. Intel from rebel spies tells them that there may be transfigured humans in the area, all affected by the cursed spirit known as Mahito. The captain stops the group and tells Tatsumi to move on ahead using Curcio's invisibility. She plans to meet up with him on the first floor. His goal is to scout the area and take out minor enemies in their path. Tatsumi understands the assignment and dons the dragon's armor, cloaking himself in the process. 9:03 p.m. Tatsumi splits off and encounters his first cursed spirit. the Grasshopper Curse. Using Incursio's stealth, Tatsumi approaches the spirit, which he notices is feeding on a corpse. Out of anger, Tatsumi throws a strike directly at its head, destroying both it and the curse tool making the curtain. After continuing to travel deeper into the subway, it is 9:15 p.m. and the captain's and Tatsumi's paths reconverge once again. The mission stands and the team moves on. Akame continues to hunt down the remaining disaster curses, getting closer and closer to success each time. One target down, only 2 left to go. Jogo begins to shout in anger how much he despises humans and this is where they'll all die. He puts his hands together and begins to say the words domain expansion, but he is quickly interrupted when his left hand is sliced off, Akame landing effortlessly behind him in the process. The curse quickly begins to spread before the remainder of his arm hits the floor. Choso stands across from him, hands together. Choso's piercing blood saved Jogo in the nick of time, before Murasame's curse took him out. In an attempt to hit Akame, Choso hit Jogo's arm almost in the instant she made contact. Akame prepares to strike again. The station is still full of citizens, and the floor is riddled with corpses. Another train pulls into the station, holding a horde of transfigured humans. The doors fly open and the monstrosities flood out into the subway, Mahito following close behind them. He charges Akame, slamming a giant morphed version of his fist into where she was standing. Now backed into a corner, Akame has to make a decision. In a split second, she raises her hand above her head, grabbing her blade, making a cut all the way across her palm. The curses are stunned. Why would she do this? Did she lose hope of winning? Curse marks begin to cover Akame's body, and suddenly she is gone from where she stood. Transfigured humans all around the station begin to fall. Their bodies swiftly begin to hit the floor. Jogo begins to torch random spots around him in hopes of catching the assassin, but to no avail. Choso shoots a beam of blood in a circle around him. Amazed by her speed, Mahito stands in the center of the chaos with a big grin on his face. One by one, enemies continue to fall. The disaster curse is unable to keep up, when in the blink of an eye, Akame appears inches away from Mahito. With all the power in her swing, her target in her sights, her blade arcs upwards towards her opponent. Gate open. Mahito avoids the strike, stretching his body away from Akame. She turns around, setting her sights on and glancing towards the source of the voice, the man masking a Suguru Geto. Images of her training flash through her mind, helping her decide her next move. She continues forward, almost instantly swinging her sword at Kenjaku until she suddenly stopped. The prison realm has been activated, halting both Akame and Murasame's movements. Mahito teases the assassin, saying she almost got him. The man in the robes begins to speak, saying he expected more from the famous assassin. Akame attempts to break free before she hears the words, "Gate close." 9:17 p.m. After Hanami's defeat, vines in the surrounding area open up. Citizens pour themselves back into the streets, along with rebel intelligence. One such intelligence stumbles across Captain Nahenda, Susanoo, and Tatsumi. They bring bad news. Akame has officially been sealed. 9:22 p.m. All remaining members of Night Ray receive word to enter the curtain. The first team we see enter consists of Lubbock with his wire-like Imperial Arms crosstail, accompanied by Leone and her animal-like Lionel. 2 more follow suit, Mine and her energy-blasting Pumpkin, and Chelsea with her shape-shifting makeup kit. 9:27 p.m. Tatsumi moves on ahead, making his way out of the metro station. Using Incursio's speed and power to swiftly move through the city, he finds fellow Night Ray members and breaks the bad news. Tatsumi relays the captain's plan. All teams surround the exits and make their way in. It's an all-out battle to save Akame, no matter what. Tatsumi, now with Lubbock and Leone, discuss the team's options. There is still a curtain preventing free movement and reinforcements from entering. Leone decides the team split up, and separates the two, leaving Lubbock and Tatsumi to take down the curtain. 9:40 p.m. We see Night Raid sniper, Mine, moving through the streets of Shibuya, when a sorcerer with streaked markings on his face approaches, saying how happy he is to get to kill a girl. This is Haruta. Mine calls him a weirdo and raises Pumpkin to her chest. She's ready to fire when Haruta throws his sword in her direction. She quickly deflects it with her rifle and re-aims her gun. Once again, she is ready to fire when she feels an impact on the side of her face. The weapon he just threw came back for a second attack. He retrieves his blade and Mine prepares herself. She re-aims her gun to see he tossed his blade again. She narrowly dodges it, but the enemy starts to move in closer. Gaining more power the tougher of a situation she's in, Mine fires a powerful beam hitting Haruta head on. He falls to his knees, singed head to toe. She gathers herself and begins to move on when suddenly a sharp pain meets the side of her body, knocking her off balance. The sword zooms past her after the impact, returning to Haruta, who remains standing. She winces and begins to hold the wound. He approaches her again, taunting her along the way, saying it looks like she didn't finish him off after all. Before he even realizes, Haruta is grabbed by the neck. There stands Leone. She growls at him. She drops the enemy for a split second, only enough time for her to kick him into the wall. He starts to beg her to stop, but she slams Haruta into the ground, leaving a crater behind. It appears his luck has run out. Leone checks in with Mine and makes sure she's okay before the two decide to keep moving. 10:01 p.m. In search of the ones responsible for the curtain, Tatsumi and Lubbock maneuver through the city. Tatsumi jumps in the air where he spots the enemy on top of a tower. Lubbock follows suit and begins scaling the building. The two Night Raid assassins prepare to engage the enemy. Tatsumi leaps onto the top of the tower and flies past the enemies, catching them by surprise. Using Lubbock's wires, he wraps one of the enemies and brings him straight to the ground. The two boys land safely and surround the older man. The man lays still on the ground before Lubbock begins to shout at him. He says he knows when someone's playing dead. The man, named Awasaka, stands up with a grin. Awasaka begins to charge Lubbock and Tatsumi, only to be caught again by wires. Lubbock whispers to himself, "Unlucky for you, you fell right where I wanted." Lubbock squeezes his hand, wrapping Awasaka once again. Lubbock has a sense of confidence before he realizes that his wires aren't piercing the enemy's skin. The finest of them should easily be able to cut through somebody. He looks to Tatsumi telling him something's up, and he scrambles for more thread. Awasaka swiftly breaks free and moves past the wire onto the assassins. Lubbock takes a punch straight to the stomach, knocking him back. Tatsumi begins to trade blows with Awasaka, but to no avail. He summons his spear in hopes of hurting the enemy. Tatsumi is shocked that he's not able to pass the enemy's defenses, and Lubbock begins to recover himself after the attack. Lubbock begins to gather more thread, forming his wires into a halberd above his head. He goes for an attack full strength at Awasaka, but the enemy raises his arms and catches the makeshift weapon with ease. Tatsumi attacks again, still failing to do any damage. Awasaka throws Lubbock off to the side and grapples Tatsumi, slamming him into the ground. Suddenly, Lubbock gets an idea and tells Tatsumi to hold the enemy off. Tatsumi continues to struggle against the enemy's hold, claiming he's trying his best. Using as much strength as he can muster, he throws an attack at the enemy, but his fist stops, unable to break Awasaka's guard. Awasaka knocks Tatsumi back into the ground. He slowly approaches Tatsumi when all of a sudden, his neck begins to bleed. Lubbock's finest thread, lying in wait for the enemy sorcerer to approach, works exactly as planned. Lubbock stands to the side of the street with his arm extended and crosstail in his hand. Tatsumi gives Lubbock credit for the takedown, and the curtain has officially vanished, and the rebels can move freely throughout Shibuya. 10:02 p.m. We cut to Captain Nahenda and Susanoo traveling through the tunnels. They continue to progress after taking out weak curses along the way. It is here where they encounter Kenjaku. "You must be the captain of Night Raid." The captain snaps back and says, "You must be behind all of this." Special grade curse, smallpox deity. Kenjaku says he'll be waiting by the rails if they manage to finish this opponent. He steps back deeper into the tunnel, disappearing from sight. The captain spits that it won't be much of a wait. The curse slams its hand into its fist. Suddenly, Susanoo is encased in the coffin. A boulder slams itself on top of the coffin, but it's quickly shattered as Susanoo counterattacks with his staff. Nahenda says it's going to take a lot more than that to stop them. Susanoo and Nahenda charge forward. He gets encased again. Nahenda grapples the cursed spirit, snapping both of its arms. Susanoo breaks free, barely scathed at all. That's when he charges the spirit from behind, piercing it with his staff. The smallpox deity has been exorcised. This is when Nahenda makes the decision to regroup with the others. 10:10 p.m. After splitting up with Lubbock, Tatsumi heads deeper into the train station. Leaping down the set of stairs, he immediately locks eyes with Choso. Choso wastes no time, quickly forming a laser of blood heading straight for Tatsumi. He quickly raises his arms, bracing for the impact while Incursio forms over his body. Tatsumi slides back and lands on his feet, a chunk of Incursio's armor missing from his forearm. Once again, Choso shoots a piercing blood attack. This time Tatsumi evades the stream and flies in Choso's direction. He uses his spear in an attempt to full swing, but Choso reacts and hardens his arms with blood. Tatsumi throws his fist into his opponent, making Choso fall back. Convergence is shot once more, but Tatsumi reacts in time to close the distance again, before he hears the words, "Supernova." Stunned from the attack, Tatsumi hadn't realized there was blood forming behind him. He's been using Incursio's armor for a while now too. He's weakening and chinks in his armor begin to show. Determined to save Akame, save everyone, once more he lets out a scream, yelling the name Incursio. Choso begins to condense his blood to its fullest, a convergence that will surely pierce anything in its path. Tatsumi begins, overflowing with the dragon's power. In an instant their paths cross. Convergence fires and Tatsumi's power is unleashed. Each let their final attacks fly. Tatsumi flashes behind his enemy. Choso remains standing for just a moment before he falls to the ground. Tatsumi attempts to catch his breath before his armor crumbles around him. Choso's poisonous blood working his way through his veins, Tatsumi faints as well. 10:20 p.m. Leon, Nahenda, Chelsea, and Susanoo reach the Shibuya Avenue gate. Now that Akame has been sealed, saving her is Night Raid's primary objective. They will need her for their upcoming fights. The captain warns the group about the enemies she encountered in the tunnels. Susanoo acknowledges his strength. Leon states that she can't believe they caught Akame, but they'll be sure to get her back. Chelsea says she hopes there's still time before Susanoo stops the group, saying he senses an enemy. The group comes to a halt. Ahead is an octopus-looking curse. Leon and Susanoo storm forward, attacking it from both sides simultaneously, knocking it back in the process. The curse begins to gag, throwing up a pile of bones, clearly recently consumed. It is at this point it starts to get mad. It begins to say the names of Jogo, Mahito, and Hanami all at once. The curse asks how dare they kill Hanami. It sheds its skin, growing bigger and more menacing in stature. The cursed spirit flies up into the air and begins to form a ball of water above its head. Nahenda yells the name Susanoo and he jumps into action. Susanoo jumps forward, slashing at the orb. It bursts and begins to flood the room with water. Nahenda and Leon grapple onto the surrounding pillars, and Susanoo hovers in the air. Leon taunts the enemy, asking why he's so scared to come down from the air. "My name is Dagon. We all bear names," he responds. Susanoo appears above Dagon, hitting him down into the ground. Nahenda, Leon, and Susanoo all charge together, until they hear the words, "Domain Expansion." Water begins to burst from all sides of Dagon. A harsh sunlight begins to fill the room, and the sound of crashing waves surround Night Raid. Dagon's domain expansion has been activated. Leon looks to her captain for reassurance before they both get attacked by Shikigami, the domain's sure-hit effect. They realize they're in a bad situation. They didn't even see the opponent attack. Nahenda scrambles her thoughts together and decides now's the time. It's time for Susanoo to activate his trump card. Essentially being a cursed tool and not targeted by the domain, Susanoo begins to undergo a transformation. His outfit changes shape and turns black, and his hair turns a stark white. A different aura now surrounds the lifelike Imperial arms. Dagon sizes up the enemy, realizing his domain isn't targeting Susanoo. He makes a mental note to himself to keep track of him at all times. Aquatic beasts begin to surround Dagon. His technique known as Death Swarm. He plans to focus 70% of his power for Susanoo and 30% for Leon, not seeing the captain as much of a threat. Susanoo charges across the water, straight in Dagon's direction. As he does, a horde of Shikigami attacks Susanoo first, followed by Leon. Susanoo's transformation, although powerful, comes at quite a cost. Every time it's used, it shortens the captain's lifespan, causing her to currently be out of commission. Susanoo breaks free of Death Swarm and grabs the hilt of his staff, now turned sword. A huge amount of energy begins to focus into the blade, causing it to extend. Susanoo yells out and swings the giant blade at Dagon. He tries to use Shikigami to meet the sword, but it's just not enough to stop it. The massive energy blade hits Dagon head on. Nahenda and Leon still lay on the beach badly injured, followed by Dagon, who's barely survived the assault. Susanoo prepares himself for another attack when all of a sudden, the barrier shatters. The domain has been broken. Outside of the barrier stands Lubbock. He used his wires to crush the fragile barrier from the outside. The captain manages to breathe out a good job to Lubbock as she stands to her feet. "Let's finish this thing off," Leon growls, pulling herself up. Susanoo, Leon, Lubbock, and Nahenda all stand side by side. Dagon attempts to stand to face his enemy before he hears a familiar voice calling his name. All of a sudden, Mahito appears from around the corner and approaches Dagon. He reaches Dagon and says they're going to take out the humans together. Dagon warns Mahito of the one with the horns being Susanoo. Mahito says that shouldn't be a problem as he leans into Dagon's weakened shoulder, and all of a sudden, Dagon's body grows slack. A cloud of smoke fades away, revealing Chelsea, embracing Dagon with a needle pierced through the back of his neck. Lubbock praises Chelsea for her tactics before the captain begins to speak. Susanoo is told to go on ahead since he is the fastest of everyone there. Leon and the captain are still in no shape to fight, so the plan is to find Tatsumi and head to Akame's location. Susanoo gives a quick understood and heads to the next station center. The captain begins to tell the rest of the team the plan before a dark-haired figure appears around the corner and starts making his way towards the group. Toji Zenin. The window suddenly shatters and Lubbock finds himself outside, a new enemy staring him down. Leon screams for Lubbock's name, and Chelsea is confused at what even happened. "Humans happened," Jogo says while handling Dagon's remains, "and it's time you pay for it." Jogo suddenly appears in front of the still injured Leon, smothering her in flames. That's one. Next is Chelsea, who meets the same fate. That's two. Nahenda attempts to stand up but is too injured from the previous fight. Jogo swiftly approaches her and she is engulfed in flames as well. That's three. All of a sudden, Jogo feels a powerful presence in the city. He swiftly moves throughout the metro to find Tatsumi embracing Cursio's armor. But this transformation was different than before. His body and armor have begun to fuse. Tatsumi is giving his all to the dragon inside Incursio. This form of Incursio is a lot more sharp than the usual armor, more dragon-like, but the transformation was able to reduce the effects of Choso's poison. We cut to Toji slowly beginning to walk towards Lubbock. He begins to panic as he thinks to himself, this guy is fast and he has to make it back to the others. Suddenly, Toji appears behind Lubbock, hitting him full force from behind. He falls forward and hits the floor. Lubbock goes completely still. Luckily, Lubbock used wire wrapped around his body to take most of the blow. As for his pulse, Lubbock can place metal wires throughout his body to constrict his blood vessels, the perfect way to play dead. One footstep, followed by another, closer and closer by the second, until a full force kick meets Lubbock's side, sending him flying. Lubbock throws his hand up, wiring to a nearby window. He flies to a higher level of the nearby building, but Toji follows right behind him. 10:51 p.m. What is with this guy, he thinks to himself. With not even a second to spare, Lubbock expands his threads, creating a barrier between him and the enemy assassin, halting Toji's momentum. Suddenly, a building collapses in Shibuya. Toji's head turns to take notice of the destruction. When he turns back, Lubbock is gone. Whatever that explosion was, thank God for the distraction. Hopefully it's one of the others, Lubbock thinks to himself. 11:01 p.m. Incursio flies through the air, battering Jogo one hit after the other. Incursio flashes above Jogo, slamming him swiftly into the ground. Jogo recovers and manages to bring himself to his knees before Tatsumi appears behind him again, knocking him into the other direction. Jogo is confused how one human can have so much power. Maximum Meteor, he shouts. A ball of fire begins to fall from the sky. Tatsumi leaps into the air, facing the meteor head on. In a flash, he charges full speed through it, leaving a hole with the rest of it crumbling around him. The way you treat the lives of others. What a disgusting creature, Tatsumi glares. Jogo, still on the ground, looks above in awe, raising his hands in defense. Tatsumi tightens his grip on his spear, holding both hatred and intent. He speeds forward, charging spear first directly through Jogo. Clearly outmatched, the disaster curse has been destroyed. After his fight, Tatsumi notices something out the corner of his eye. Lubbock? Lubbock continues to flee using his wire to travel through the city, Toji following suit. On top of the remains of a roof, he notices Tatsumi. Tatsumi dashes into action, immediately clashing with the opposing assassin. Lubbock stops in his tracks and begins gathering wire in his palms. Toji and Tatsumi break their clash, knocking themselves back from each other. Lubbock begins extending his wires through the city's building, creating a web. Toji is on the move again, his attention completely shifting to Tatsumi. He continues moving forward when Tatsumi jumps at the assassin, easily being deflected, but the encounter manages to push Toji back into an array of wires. They tighten around Toji's body, restraining him in place. Knowing these are his best threads, Lubbock is confident even Toji can't break free. Lubbock forms a spear with his remaining wire and throws it directly into Toji's chest. Wire begins to spread throughout Toji's body, finding its way to his heart. With a squeeze of his hand, Lubbock destroys the assassin's heart, and Toji has been defeated. It seems like another victory until Tatsumi falls to his knees and passes out. 11:14 p.m. Tatsumi's eyes begin to open before realization hits him. Lubbock is there by his side. "You're awake. How long was I out?" "About 10 minutes, Lubbock says, but we gotta get a move on. It's time to find the others." The mission still stands, free Akame and eliminate the cursed spirit Mahito. In the Shibuya subway, we see an almost completely recovered Leon, her healing factor restoring most of her injuries at this point. After finding Chelsea and the captain's bodies, she decided to move on. As she travels further into the train station, she comes across a horde of transfigured humans. She acknowledges that this is the power of the Patchface curse and is determined to take them out quickly before she regroups with the others. One by one, Leon swiftly takes out the monstrosities, when she suddenly senses a presence behind her. She leaps to safety, but was barely able to avoid the deadly touch. A familiar hand was reaching out to her, and there stands Mahito. "I almost got you," he laughs to himself. Leon determines that this is Night Raid's target, and she is ready to confirm the kill, making sure the enemy knows this as well. A voice appears around the corner shouting Leon's name. Lubbock runs around the corner and regroups with his ally. Leon is glad to see he's alright. Mahito says this is gonna be fun. He looks to the others and further transforms a human behind him. Tatsumi suddenly appears from thin air behind Mahito, going in for an attack. Dropping Incursio's invisibility, he lands a kick directly on Mahito, knocking him back. Mahito stands himself up. Multiplicity body repel. A transfigured human fills the subway. Tatsumi evades the attack, and Lubbock creates a wall of wire bracing for the impact. Leon leaps from wall to wall, eventually finding herself behind Mahito. Tatsumi pushes forward and the two perform a pincer attack, until spiked limbs spread out all over from Mahito's body, causing the two to retreat. Tatsumi warns the others, "Whatever you do, don't let him touch you." 11:16 p.m. Mine stands face to face with Mahito. Mine begins to think to herself, "Whatever I do, I can't let his hands touch me. If I do, it's over." She begins to taunt the enemy, saying that the target came right to her and that she'll make this one quick. Killing you should be fun. Mahito bolts forward at Mine, forming his hands into a mace, swinging at her. She dodges, leaving a bash in the concrete in front of her. Mahito grins to himself, saying that he might as well waste more of her time. Mahito shouts joyfully at Mine as he inches closer and closer until she swings Pumpkin into view. This should work just fine. Mine aims her rifle at Mahito and pulls the trigger. Being in such close quarters to such a threatening enemy, Pumpkin's power increased exponentially. The Mahito double has been defeated and disintegrated in the process. 11:19 p.m. Leon, Lubbock, and Tatsumi continue to fight with Mahito. Tatsumi plans to draw on more of Incursio's power, but is determined not to lose control. He begins to shout Incursio's name, but Mahito heads straight for him. Mahito reaches his hand out and is inches away from Tatsumi's chest, when suddenly a bullet of light hits Mahito's hand. "Mine?" Tatsumi is happy to see another friendly face. Mahito pretends to whine. "There's 4 of you guys now, that's not fair. You two wear him down, I'll keep you covered from afar." Lubbock? Mine begins to power up another shot. Lubbock says he's on it and begins to gather more and more wire in his hands. "Got it," Leon and Tatsumi shout. The battle continues and the raid on Shibuya feels like it's never ending. Night Raid is still unable to put Mahito down. Leon and Tatsumi use their swift movements to surround the enemy. Mahito has a devilish grin on his face. He shapes his fists into weapons and prepares for Night Raid's attack. Tatsumi charges in, bashing Mahito with his shoulder. Leon follows suit and jumps on top of the enemy cursed spirit, extending both legs, pushing him further into the ground. She quickly jumps out of the way, allowing Mine to send a shot straight at the grounded enemy cursed spirit, lifting a cloud of dust. Leon questions to herself if it worked. Wires begin to surround the area, attaching themselves to every surface they find. Lubbock's wires find themselves wrapping around a silhouette left in the smoke. Lubbock thinks to himself that he got the enemy until the wires begin to go taut. He struggles to contain whatever's in the smoke. The air forcefully clears as monstrous heads emerge from the cloud. Mahito continues his attack, the devastation forcing Night Raid out of the subway into the open. The onslaught doesn't seem to come to an end until a sword of light suddenly appears, slashing through Mahito. Everyone snaps their head towards the source of the attack. Susanoo? Mine steadies herself. Nahenda's life force is almost completely drained. She is barely hanging on, but he intends to fight using the last of her will. No more words are needed. Tatsumi, Lubbock, Leon, Mine, Susanoo all re-aim their focus. All of them have a mission to complete, and they are determined to succeed. Night Raid spreads out and circles the cursed spirit, cautious of any surprises Mahito may throw out. Night Raid prepares to make their move when in the blink of an eye, a barrier goes up. Domain expansion. Self-embodiment of perfection. What is this? Tatsumi thinks to himself. It's over, Mahito grins, when suddenly an image of a dragon surges into his mind. A powerful presence stands behind him, only in passing. Tatsumi's armor and Curcio still holds an old soul. Claw marks drag themselves up Mahito's body, and the barrier recedes from the surrounding area. Tatsumi checks to see if everybody's okay, but he turns around in horror. Leon's body lies mutilated far beyond even her own recovery, and Lubbock is split in half from the shoulder to his hip. Two more of Night Raid's best have been defeated. A powerful beam of light, followed by a swing of a blade of energy, follow the domain's collapse. Let's finish this, Susanoo roars. Being a cursed tool in spirit, he was unaffected by Mahito's domain. He joins Tatsumi by his side. Trying to stay out of reach, Mine approaches her allies for one final stand. Tatsumi begins to stand, determined to finish this, with Mine, Susanoo, together. A bloody Mahito stands as well. He says he's finally found it, the true essence of his soul. He begins to transform and reshape into his purest state yet. Idle transfiguration, body of distorted killing. Mahito composes himself, beginning to feel out his new form. Tatsumi shouts in Curcio once more. The young assassin had already begun fusing with his armor, this time going even a step further. Forcing an even further evolution, now stands a daunting and heavily morphed set of armor. The headpiece and coattails elongated, but most notably, an imposing set of wings protrude from his back. Whatever stands before us is no longer the Tatsumi that entered the city of Shibuya. Susanoo also stands by with his powerful blade, determined to carry out his master's dying wish. And once again, Mine prepares another shot. Tatsumi charges Mahito, his wings propelling him forward at sonic speeds. Mahito returns the favor, swinging his strengthened arm in the area around him. Susanoo enters the fray, Tatsumi by his side, attempting an onslaught of attacks. The three continue to trade blows. Susanoo is knocked back, sliding to his feet, and Mahito grapples Tatsumi, slamming him into the earth. A beam of light barely misses Mahito from a distance, giving Tatsumi enough room to stand. Tatsumi thinks to himself, this is it, all or nothing. Susanoo is determined to finish the enemy with his allies by his side. Mine is determined everyone will make it home together. Susanoo begins to store energy in his blade, Mine the same in the base of her gun. Tatsumi, pushing himself to the absolute limit, stores whatever power he can muster, all for one final attack. Mahito approaches. Whatever the outcome, this ends now. Tatsumi flies forward, a boom of sound in his trail, his spear aimed directly at his foe. Susanoo unleashes the strength of his sword. Mahito attempts to stop the attack, but the power catches him off guard. Tatsumi connects with the cursed spirit full force. Mahito flings back from the impact. With perfect aim, Mine unleashes an insane amount of power from her gun, hitting Mahito dead on, creating a huge cloud of smoke. The smoke begins to clear and the damage has been done. Mahito's body has been forced back into its previous state. Tatsumi lands on the ground behind him, a fear-inspiring glare in his eye. Mahito begins to crawl away, struggling to make distance from the threat that is right behind him. One step at a time, the now transformed Tatsumi slowly follows suit. Mahito continues to cry out in fear of what's to come when suddenly we see Kenjaku standing over him. He's begging for help. Shall I save you, Mahito? Kenjaku beckons. Time seems to slow itself before Kenjaku reaches his hand out and absorbs Mahito, adding him to Kenjaku's arsenal. 11:36 p.m. The only remaining forces are Tatsumi, Mine, and Susanoo, standing against the powerful Kenjaku. Susanoo attempts to raise the exhausted members of Night Raid's spirits. Here lies our final wall, he shouts. Using the boost of confidence, Tatsumi makes his first move before a dark stream of spirits begins to grab hold of him, dragging him down. They begin to submerge him into a dark pit when Mine screams his name in panic. "This ends here. We are leaving this city together," she says. She begins to charge Pumpkin, energy building more and more by the second. Kenjaku sets his sight on her. He holds his hand forward. Maximum Uzumaki. Energy and cursed spirits begin to form behind Kenjaku. Susanoo flies forward, holding up his hands where a reflective surface forms. The Mirror of Yata. It takes the force of Kenjaku's attack before it begins to crack. Susanoo is losing power. Using the last of his strength before Nahenda's death, the blast flies straight back at Kenjaku. A wall of pure ice forms in front of the cursed sorcerer, stopping the blast. Another body joins Kenjaku's side, Sukuna's right hand, Arame. Tatsumi emerges from the darkness and prepares for another attack when Mine suddenly shoots her rifle using all of her energy. Kenjaku and Arame notice the blast. Traveling at such destructive speeds, devastating is an understatement. The ice walls begin to crack. Arame ups their defenses. This is Mine's last attack. She will pour all of her spirit and energy into this final blow. The blast consumes everything in its path, the beam cutting through clouds and reaching the stars. The smoke begins to clear and Mine's body goes limp, gravity pulling it to the earth. Pumpkin falling apart right in her hands. Tatsumi screams for Mine with a hoarseness in his voice. Kenjaku says that was a close one, a mix between spatial sorcery and a slew of transfigured humans lay dead on the earth. Kenjaku's voice rings behind Tatsumi. "You fought well, but this is goodbye." Kenjaku, holding the prison realm with the sealed Akame, begins to vanish. In a last-ditch attempt, Tatsumi bolts forward at even more impressive speeds, but just as quick as he came, he was gone. Tatsumi, in complete shock, trudges forward. Pieces of armor fall off of him as he approaches Mine's side. On the ground lay Susanoo's core, deactivated by Nahenda's death, and further from him is Mine, completely motionless. He moves on, barely able to keep himself standing, repeating Mine's name as he does. More and more armor falling off with every step he takes until he reaches her and collapses. After failing to exorcise Mahito and losing their trusted allies, Night Raid has failed. And that, everybody, is the end of Night Raid in the Shibuya incident. I'm by no means a power scaler, but I actually do think JJK and Akame ga Kill hold up pretty well against each other. There were actually a couple of last notes I wanted to add on to this video that didn't exactly make the cut. First up is, do I really think Imperial Arms will be able to affect cursed spirits? And my answer is yes. Besides just making things fair for this video, we have seen that Imperial Arms kind of have an aura around them. They have their own personality, their own soul, so it would make sense that they would be able to interact with cursed spirits to an extent, considering they have some type of energy that allows them to work the way they do. What exactly would happen if Akame cut Mahito with Murasame? So something actually interesting happens in the manga. We see Akame attack a being that essentially has two souls, and it kills one of them but not the other. Although Akame can't specifically control which soul she targets, we have seen that Murasame does one-shot the soul period, and Mahito only has one, meaning if he got cut by her, he would pretty much die. Why not include Bro and Shield? This was actually a bit of a toss-up for me. First of all is Tatsumi and the Incursio armor. Now, I could have made him get it from Bro in some point in the video, but I didn't feel like leaving Susanoo or Chelsea out for that sake of continuity, because they're pretty cool characters in of themselves. What if Esdeath was in this video? I actually did put Esdeath in Gojo's place initially in this video, but I thought it made more sense if it was Akame. I do think Esdeath will be more than capable of holding her own if I'm being honest. How do I actually think JJK characters scale with Akame ga Kill? The biggest scaling factor for me was Esdeath and Akame's ability to dodge lightning. There are a lot of mixed opinions on JJK's speed on how they actually scale with the characters in verse, so I thought we'd play it safe and actually put them around even. I'm not gonna lie though, I do think Esdeath, Tatsumi, and Akame can swing with the big leagues, and other characters like Leon and Lubbock kind of could scale around Nobara and Megami in the right sense. But at the time of recording this, I think those are all my extra add-ins for this video, and I'm sure I'll think of something else once I finish up. If you have any questions about Night Raid in Shibuya or anything you'd like to add on to this video, please let me know down below. This video is very experimental, so I'm interested to see what you guys think. But thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one.